Hey everyone, it's Mari. Thank you so much for stopping by today. I have some crafty inspiration today for Studio Light and Ecstasy Crafts, and I'm going to be working with some of their cutting and embossing dies. This is Stencil SL383 here that you can see on my desk. I'm going to be using another die set as well, a small little bit of another one, but mostly I'm going to be using this particular die set here. And these cutting and embossing dies are just amazing. They come with a ton of different pieces and so many different things that you can make with these. This particular series has 4 different sets: 380, 381, 382, and 383. And I just love all of them. They're super, super cool. And I'm going to show you today how you can actually make a little mini book, journal, whatever you want to use it for, out of this set here, the SL383. So I'm just going to show you here. I've already cut the spine of my book, and you can see that I've just used a little bit of elastic here to create the binding pieces inside. These elastics are what is going to hold my signatures or the inside parts of my journal in my book here. So here you can just see the elastic I'm going to show you here. I just bought this on Amazon. It's just that really nice, soft, smooth, round elastic. And you can just see here how I've threaded that through the holes of the binding to create those pieces on the inside that are going to hold my paper. Now I am going to show you how I cut my paper, the dimensions of my paper, and all that sort of thing here. So I have cut some paper at 9.5 by 5 inches. And this is just regular cardstock from an office supply store. It's nothing fancy, but it's just a nice lightweight cardstock so that it's not too heavy on the inside of my book. Now, like I said, I did cut them at 9.5 by 5. I'm going to tell you in the written instruction here to score it at 2.5, but of course that's wrong. You're going to score it at 4.75, which is half of 9.5, and then insert those into the elastic binding here. So I'm going to show you how I use these dies, like I said, to create the cover and all of the different bits for my project here. But there's so many ways that you can use these dies. I don't even scratch the surface today in this short video with how you can use this die set. These 2 large squares are how you're going to create the cover for the book. And so what I did was I cut the largest square out of some really heavy mixed media paper, and I want that to be nice and strong for my cover. So I cut 2 of those, and you can just see here I'm going to eventually attach those to the binding. Now I'm going to use the Ultimate Scrap Paper 14. This is just such beautiful paper. I love it so much. And I'm going to use an entire sheet to cover my project here, and you'll just see here how I'm going to do that. So I'll use the largest square. I'll cut that twice from that patterned paper. And you'll just see me here going ahead and showing you how you could just use any different portion of this paper that you wanted, or whatever paper you're using. This particular square will perfectly cut 4 pieces from a 12 by 12 piece of paper. So I'm going to adhere this particular square to one of the white mixed media cardstock papers that I cut from that same square to cover it. So if you wanted your cover to be white, you could just leave that white, but I did want some patterned paper detail on my cover. So I'm just going to go ahead and glue that onto my cover with a little bit of liquid adhesive in that way. Now to attach that to the binding, I am going to just put a little bit of liquid adhesive on the inside of that binding flap, and I will adhere the one cover to the one side of that. And I'm just kind of making sure that I have it in the right orientation for the front of the book, so that the top is the top and the bottom is the bottom. I like that script on the front cover, and I made sure that the script is going in the right orientation and that it is at the bottom portion, or more in the bottom portion of that front cover. And then I'm just going to go ahead and do exactly the same thing. You can see that I have covered the inside of the cover as well with that same pattern paper, but I'm using the B side of the pattern paper to cover the inside of the cover. So the outside of the cover has kind of like that more detailed part, and then the inside of the cover is that really pretty pink color that's more of a solid color. It kind of looks really watercolory, actually. It's really pretty. So I really like that. I like how the front and back coordinate and the inside and outside of the covers coordinate nicely. I'm just showing you here how I'm, making sure that you understand that I realize you have to score at 4.75, not half of 5. So because the length of the paper is what we want to score, I'm going to score it in half, like I said, at 4.75. So you'll just see me taking this to my scoreboard. I will score each one of these different pages that I have. And depending on how many different signatures or sections you want in your little book, you can just score as many of these as you would like. And then you can just take those and put them into the different sections of that binding. So there's 2 elastic sections there that you can put these into. You just slide those different signatures into the elastic, and that will bind the book in that way. So super easy to put this together. Voila, you already have a book created. You could make this into a little photo album. You could make this into a journal, just whatever you want to use it for. You could make a junk journal out of this. So many different ways to use this die set to create a little book. Now, I am going to do a little bit of extra detail with the binding of my book as well. So what I'm going to do here is I've cut a strip 3/4 of an inch wide by 5.5 inches long, which is 5.5 is the length of the book. And so I'm going to glue that to cover the holes on the binding. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. Actually, the sky's the limit. You can use the dies however you see fit and create whatever you want from this. But this is just one way that I decided to do this. So I've covered the holes in the spine, and then I went ahead and used that same binding die again, and I cut it from the patterned paper. And so I'm going to cover up that whole binding section now that was white. And I'm going to take a darning needle, and I'm going to take some of that same elastic again. I thread the elastic through those holes and I tie it to create a little closure. I've also decorated the binding with a couple of some little gems from my stash to cover the extra holes. And that's just how I decided to decorate and close my journal. There's a lot of different ways you could do this, and there's a bunch of coordinating dies in that set to allow you to create a little ribbon closure, all kinds of fun stuff. Now I'm also going to use Stencil SL382. I'm going to use a few of the dies from that set to decorate the cover of my journal. And I'm going to use some of the circle dies. And I really love this little detailed circle die as well with the little cutaways in it. I thought that was really fun. And so I will cut that from some white paper and then layer it onto some circles. And then this journal title here, that's from the SL383. I'm going to die cut that and use that as a title piece for the front of my cover. So I am going to just show you how I'm going to put these pieces all together here. So the journal title piece I cut from white cardstock. And the little base die for that I cut from kind of some lilac colored cardstock, and I will layer that white onto that lilac. I think that's really pretty, and I will go ahead and glue these together. So there you can see I've cut a circle from some of that same really pretty pattern paper that's the inside of our cover. That's the scrap 14 paper. And I'm going to just use a little bit of liquid adhesive here to adhere the circle detailed piece onto this other circle as my base. And then I'm going to use a little bit of green cardstock for my stash that coordinates nicely with the green that's in the Ultimate Scrap 14 paper. And I'm going to use that just for that little circle in the center, the smallest circle. And then I will layer the journal title over top of all of those different circle pieces just by gluing that down. So this is just a really fun way to decorate the front cover of your book. This cover could be decorated in all kinds of different ways using those dies and using some of the die cut pieces from the Ultimate Scrap 18 paper that I'm going to be using to decorate my journal page that I'm going to be creating. So I'm also going to be using some distress ink in Forest Moss, and I'm just going to use a distressing tool here. I'm going to use that to just add a little bit of detail to the edge of my book. So I'll just take that and brush that onto the very, very edges of my cover all the way around the entire cover, front and back. And that just adds just some really nice, like I said, just a little bit of color detail to the edges there. Finishes it off really nicely. Now this is the Ultimate Scrap 18 paper that I referred to. And so this is a cut apart paper. This is for fussy cutting. You end up with a ton of embellishments when you cut this apart. I'm also going to use the Scrap 17 paper. This is a 4x3 cut apart paper. And I wanted to use one of these cut aparts for the page that I'm going to finish in my little journal today. So I will go ahead and take my trimmer and I will cut apart that entire sheet of 4x3 cards. A 4x3 cut apart sheet is just so great for your pocket pages or just embellishing pages, whatever they might be. You could even use some of these to decorate your cover if you wanted. A lot of different ways to use these 4x3 cards for sure. So this is just a really, really great value in one sheet of pattern paper. And of course, there is a really pretty pattern on the back of this paper, but I will basically be just using that for the 4x3 cutaways. Now here you can just see I have all of my cut aparts done, and I'm going to just go ahead and put those into a little tray on my desk so that when I want to reach for an embellishment, I have them all in that little spot organized and ready to use on my page here today. And I do love all of these little pieces and how they coordinate with this Ultimate Scrap collection. Really super pretty, goes nicely with the paper that I'm using and just all coordinates beautifully. Love the colors, and it's just so soft and pretty and definitely really springy. Now I am going to use one of the stencils from Studio Light. This is Mask JL14. It's a set of 2 masks or stencils. I'm going to use this one here to add some detail onto my page that I'm going to be working on here in my little journal. So here you can just see that I am using some seedless preserves. I'm adding some seedless preserves with just a blending brush here and just adding that onto the white cardstock to add some detail onto my background. And I'm going to do exactly the same process with that Forest Moss Distress ink. So the seedless preserves I'm using is oxide, and then I'm using Forest Moss Distress ink. And just because I didn't have all of these colors in either distress or in both distress and oxide, so I just grabbed for the colors that I wanted that I had in my stash. And I definitely wanted that combination of that really pretty purple with that really nice soft mossy green, and it just goes so nicely with this collection that I'm using to decorate my little journal. So I'm just going over this really lightly, and I just wanted to create, just like I said, a little tiny bit of detail on my paper. So I'm going to take that off and reveal that, and you'll just be able to see what a lovely pattern that leaves on the paper. And the nice thing about using white cardstock as your signatures is you really have a blank canvas. You can use whatever you want on them. Now you can see here I've got one of the 4x3 cards on my paper. What I did was I took this down to my sewing machine and I sewed on 2 sides. I sewed down the left side of the 4x3 card and at the bottom so that it creates a little pocket on the page. And I'll show you a way that you can use this pocket, but there's lots of different things you could stick in there, obviously, depending on how you're planning to use your pages. So here you can just see I'm using my liquid adhesive and I'm going to glue on this embellishment piece. This is from one of the My Favorite Craft Book pads. I don't know if you've seen those before. I will link up to those in the description box below, but they're amazing. They have a ton of embellishments, stickers, pattern papers. They're gorgeous and they're a really great price point. I think at Ecstasy they're $9 and you get a ton of embellishments and paper in those little pads. So I will link up to everything that I've used today. I don't know if Ecstasy Crafts has the these cutting and embossing dies exactly what I used here today in stock yet, but they're coming. I will link up to that section of the store and everything else that I've used here today that they do have in stock, so you can check that. And I will also leave a coupon code in the description box below as well to Ecstasy Crafts if you are looking for any of these different products. But you can also see how I added sewing to that die cut piece that's in green along the right edge of the page, and that is a die that's part of the SL383 die set, which is really fun. It just creates just a really neat effect on the page, and I just added that on again with that machine sewing. Here you can just see I'm adding on just some of those die cut embellishments, and these are all fussy cut from that patterned paper, the Ultimate Scrap 18 paper that had all of those different little fussy cut bits. I sat when we were watching a movie last night and I cut that entire page out, and in no time flat, you've got tons of different embellishment pieces that you can use on your projects. And I just wanted to create some layers here with some foam adhesive, and just adding some little different bits over top of my 4x3 card pocket to create some detail on this page. And this just comes together so nicely. It's so fun. I love these little die sets. They are so neat, and there's so much creativity to be had with these different dies from Studio Light. So definitely check out the cutting and embossing die sets. They're gorgeous. I love that the price point is super affordable, and you can do a lot with these die sets. And if you're really loving the mini book trend, you love to create little books like this to give as gifts. This basically took me from start to finish not even 2 hours to do this whole project. So it was really quick. And once you've made one, they come together really fast. And in fact, if you wanted to, you could batch them out and cut, a whole bunch of covers at once, and then cut all your signatures at once, and so on and so forth. And if you've got the little if you've got your fussy cut paper all cut, you have all of your embellishments ready to go. So there's not a lot of time involved in creating these little books, which is really fun. So I'm just going to take a staple and staple another little embellishment tab on there. That actually came again from one of my favorite crafting books. I'm just showing you there that die that I used for that green piece there. And I'm just showing you how you could put a little photo in there. You could put some journaling in this little pocket, whatever you want. It's just a little hidden, a pocket for some little hidden goodies that you might want to put in there. So now I'm just showing you how that fits back into the book, and how the book operates, or the mechanism of the book once it's put together. Super nice. This really fun little elastic here. You could do all kinds of things with that elastic closure. You could put some little charms on it. You could use a different kind of elastic. This is just what I had, but I thought it worked, and it just looks really pretty on there with that white. Thanks so much for watching today. I had so much fun creating this. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure you check the links to Ecstasy Crafts in the description box below, and please make sure that if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, I'd love to have you as a subby. Make sure that you like and share this video, and also I would love to see you again another time. Have an amazing day, everybody. Bye-bye.